My name's Aki Ito. I'm a technology editor here with Bloomberg in San Francisco, and I'm delighted to introduce you to our next guest, Christina Lewis. There are a lot of ways to describe Christina. She is a former fellow journalist. She is the daughter of the business titan Reginald Lewis. She's a director on the foundation that's named after him, and she is the CEO and founder of a nonprofit called All Star Code. We'll be talking a lot about her nonprofit in a minute. It teaches computer science to young Black and Hispanic men. But today we're going to be having a broad conversation about what she's doing to make a difference in this community. And I hope you'll come away from this conversation not only impressed with the incredible work that she's doing, but also with a sense of what you can do to make a difference too. So Christina, welcome.
Thank you.
So glad you could join us today.
I am so excited to be here and with this community. This has been a really cool day.
Yeah. I want to go back to that moment 5 years ago. Back in 2013, you were a successful journalist, but you decided to leave that career to start All Star Code. What was the catalyst behind that decision?
Well, yes, I just left the Wall Street Journal, which is where I'd been, and I went to my first tech conference, which I paid $3,000 for. And that was a reduced rate because they were recruiting women. And so some men had paid up to $10,000 for this conference. And there were about 1,000 people there. And when I went, I saw that there were virtually no Blacks and Latinos who were there participating in tech. And I looked around and I said, this is really extreme. I have been to some really undiverse places, and I am
0 out of 1,000.
0 out of 1,000, really. I couldn't find a single person who was at a VC-backed startup in engineering or product. And I was there, but I was a journalist, philanthropist, other people who were clearly like on the outskirts. And that was, in a way, almost worse, because this group clearly had been thinking about this a little bit and had gone out. Tried to recruit. So I said, this is a huge problem, and I knew it was a huge problem in part because of what I knew from the journal, that tech is the engine of job growth, and wealth creation, but also of innovation. Today, I said, it's not just tech, every industry is being driven by tech. Every industry is going digital, and so if the people who are participating in the core of this, which I still consider to be, startups, VC-backed, or others that, that scale. We're not, the Black community in particular, which I care deeply about, isn't in a position to be solving kind of its own problems. And I think it's important, with All Star Code, which is attracting, preparing, and placing young men of color into through the tech career pipeline. And they're well on track for them getting full-time jobs at technology companies early in their careers. It's a broader conversation about impact,
mm-hmm.
And what are the problems that we are solving and who are solving them.
And why did you decide to go focus on serving this community of Black and Hispanic men in particular?
Yes.
Now, why not young girls?
Right. Well. This was back in 2012. I saw that there were programs for girls already happening. I think Kimberly Bryant from Black Girls Code spoke here last year, and Reshma Saujani from Girls Who Code, who's been one of my advisors since the beginning, founding this 5 years ago. But I really didn't see very much out there focused that would help a Black or Latino boy. And I knew personally that this was an issue because my father, whose shoulders I stand on, Reginald Lewis, it's been 30 years since his billion-dollar deal. People heard of him, by the way? Yeah? Oh, amazing. Next year will be the anniversary of the publication of his book, Why Should White Guys Have All the Fun? I know, more relevant today than when he first came up with that title 30 years ago. And unfortunately, he did pass away in 1993. But he was so talented and worked his way up into Wall Street in the original old white boys club, doing leveraged buyouts, and that's his kind of claim to fame. In 1987, he completed a $1 billion offshore leveraged buyout of Beatrice International Foods, his conglomerate with about $2 billion in revenues. there's 60 brands in 30 different countries, and this was a cultural moment, particularly in the African American community. I don't know if the few people here who are over 40 would remember that. But as successful as he was, he wouldn't have been successful. He wouldn't have had access without a summer program. And in 1965, he did the summer program, essentially the first pre-law program that Harvard Law School ran, for the first pre-law program ever in this country. And he said that that opened the world to him. So when we fast forward to 2011, and I'm there in this room, and I see that there are like no black people, I say, okay, this isn't just about like poverty. This is actually going back to kind of the history of of business in this country, and this is a sector that just hasn't been essentially like kind of integrated. Mm-hmm. And that is how I saw the lack of diversity in tech, because it was so extreme. If it were just about class, there are millions of middle class, like African Americans and Latinos, and like they would have been participating. So I identified sort of a disconnect, and then I put on my reporter's hat and I talked to like 150 different people in a lot of different sectors. And my philanthropic background comes in because we have a small foundation, but we fund sort of diversity in the professions, so pre-med, pre-law, pre-everything, and this place, that place. We'd never seen kind of pre-tech, We'd never seen pre-CS. So I went and I identified, I think, sort of like the problem, kind of the original or the foundational problem, which was sort of a vocabulary and almost cultural disconnect between even what very like high performing like person of color had as their expectations for success, and how they drive, with things, and what the tech community was looking at. And it came around to failure, and growth mindset, and this embracing of risks that I think has become like more prominent.
Not being afraid to make a mistake.
Not being afraid to make mistakes, or at least saying that you're not afraid of making mistakes. And I say it's a vocabulary, because we're all afraid of making mistakes. We're selling sweaters now, a lingua franca sweater that says "Celebrate Failure." But I know, well, this is like aspirational. But the point is that people in tech value the idea that you are open to mistakes. And it is crucial for black men in particular, because and I say this as an observer because I don't live it, but what I do as a reporter is I talk to people. I talked to Dick Parsons and to Ken Chenault, and to Robert Smith when we were starting All Star Code. Talked to them, to Bob Johnson. So there's a let's see. It's hard to talk about mistakes, and then also like as men, there's this thing that happens. Right? Where you don't want to talk about mistakes. How do you even like discuss them, that you've done something wrong? This is like very, very complicated. And again, I see this as an observer, and all I knew was that I had to create a way to create space for that. Particularly for these young men in high school who are just in such a place of developing their confidence, and who they are is so important, how they're seen. We had a student who refused to come because someone said it was nerdy, and he just couldn't take it. He was like, I can't be here, So we came with celebrating failure. It's one of our pillars, and it's about in the classroom, we actually talk to all the students about growth mindset, and the concept, and in their minds, they said to see it, well, you fail to succeed, and it becomes fun, and they, create games around it, and there's actually like a wall, like a fail wall, and then they tally them up, and who has the most fails, who makes the most mistakes, and they actually cheer for it. So that's sort of our methodology, and it comes from, sorry, this is like a long thing. But what it comes from is that what I saw with these girls' programs we're doing, people would say, oh, well, they're co-ed programs, so the boys can go to the co-ed programs. And I was like, no, because this is a distinct problem. It's a distinct group with like different needs, and there should be studies, and research and data, and it deserves, and like they deserve many people actually thinking about this problem specifically for them, I think in market terms it's a niche, but there's a customer to serve, and co-ed is very different. So that research that I talked about, it's part of what we can do because we decided to just focus on boys.
Right.
And I was encouraged by the girls' programs as well.
At its core, the program is a 6-week-long computer science intensive educational program,
yes.
right? 6 weeks of computer science classes. Do you see a difference in the students once they're done with the program? 6 weeks is a long time.
Yes, well, there are 2 aspects to our program. There's also our Scholar Services program, and we have a scholar here. But the core program is a free 6-week web development course, but where the students really learn this growth mindset. And it is amazing because they come in and it's held at companies, at Goldman Sachs, Cisco, JP Morgan, Major League Baseball, Advanced Media are hosts along with some others. We have 145 students we're teaching right now this year. They're like hunched. They keep their baseball hats on, and they don't want to take off their bags. And at the end, at demo day, which is actually happening Thursday, people will say, "Wow, you found these, these outgoing. How do you find these outgoing students?" And it's pretty incredible that really it's. Of course, they were always like that, but they wouldn't have been like that in this context. In a space that is. That's not majority minority, always in a corporate environment, they wouldn't have had that. So that's one of the amazing things about doing this. The second part of what we do is now what we're calling our Scholars Program. Our goal is that our students get full-time jobs in technology early in their careers. And I have to shout out Mamadou, who's from our first class. Hi, Mamadou. Mamadou's here, and he's interning at JP Morgan this summer as... I think, yep. And what did I say? I said, "Hey, Mamadou, is there still a lack of diversity in technology?" And what did you say?
Still don't look like Chase Digital.
And it's funny because Mamadou is also class of 2020 at Stanford. Congratulations. But he and our other scholars now, 85% of whom are majoring or minoring in computer science, virtually all in college, are now in this place where they're the only ones, and part of the reason that we're an intensive program in high school is to prepare them for the resiliency of essentially being in an alien and at times hostile environment. And I know that from things that I've seen. So the second part of our program is in our scholar services, being there to provide support, resources, and also connecting students so that they can continue to have a sense of belonging, even as in their colleges, in the workplace, where they're, of course, thriving, that they can still have support. There's a leaky pipeline problem, that's been written about a lot, and it's been written about with women and girls, and it exists, of course, with racial and ethnic people of color too. So that's what we do to serve that with monthly events, dedicated page of opportunities, a dedicated person to reach out to, letters of recommendation, different referral services. And that's really important also.
Yeah. Let me lob a more perhaps philosophical question to you. I'm hosting a new documentary series called Next Jobs, which profiles people in these cutting-edge jobs that didn't exist a generation ago. And I'm wondering, for you as an educator, how do you think about preparing young students today for a job market that's 10 or 15 years down the line when we don't even know what that job market's going to look like? We don't know what computer programming languages are going to be hot, maybe even 5 years down the road.
No, we don't. Right now, we're teaching computer science because right now computer science is the ticket to the party, but it's not the end goal in and of itself. The end goal is lifelong learning. And really, if we can, what we're inculcating in our students and what others are doing, even by being here, is having the tools and abilities to continue to learn new things. And that really is what we have to be doing for all of our youth. But what I'm committed to with All Star Code, not preparing students for jobs that, could get outsourced or could get replaced, by different AIs. So it's the ability to continue learning, that's so important in order to then be sort of confident that you'll be able to find a career, no matter what happens. So I think that's a really important thing for the future of work.
Can you share some of the maybe early signs of success that your program has had so far?
Our student population is about 80% Black and Latino. Again, all boys, 70% free reduced lunch. But virtually all are going to college, often to better colleges than they thought they would, and persisting in it. My favorite is after the program, 90% say they've decided to work harder in school. So in some ways, by being laser focused on sort of career skills and things that students need in the workplace, I've kind of created like sort of the best just college prep program out there. So I think a lot of colleges are actually looking for students who are kind of job ready, or demonstrate that they understand the workplace. So the fact that we have all the students create LinkedIn profiles during the program, they create personal websites, they're sort of infused into our curriculums. They end up doing really well in college, and obviously they're just working harder. And motivation, of course, is really significant. So when we saw that, and that we do actually we survey the students annually. We do a lot of surveys. So when I saw that 90% had decided to work harder in school, which by the way, they largely hate, it's not because they like school, they just see that now they can go somewhere else. They're taking control, determination over their own lives. That's when I knew that, that we really had something. Because if you're working harder, you'll be more successful at anything.
And I'm sure a lot of them have, like our young gentleman here, have gone on to get some amazing internships in the industry.
Yes. Well, we have students who are working now at interning, because they're only seniors in college, at Facebook, at Google, at Goldman Sachs, at AT&T. Many of our corporate funders are hiring our students now. 60% start their own jobs or businesses, even right after the summer intensive. Many have also started their own organizations, teaching other students to code, developing hackathons, there's so many different signs of how successful they are. One of my favorites is that over 30% of our instructors in our summer program are students now, and that's in part by design. But what's happening is that they do our program and they leave, and then 2 years later, now they're back and they're like, okay, I'm just finished my freshman year at Rochester Institute of Technology, and I'm ready. And they come back and they teach the program. So we also have a great pipeline of students who are actually teachers who can teach CS, which is really valuable for us also.
I know All Star Code has a big emphasis on entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
And here's my question to you. Why not send all your students to the Facebooks and the Googles of the industry? Why is it so important for them to be thinking about starting their own companies too?
Oh my gosh. So I could have like a really long answer to this question. I geek out on kind of the amateur, like the cultural anthropology of like wealth and power and success. But you need both a seat at the table to then build your own table. And so the ultimate goal for everyone in a way is to build your own table. And I think what people sometimes don't realize is that at the same time you're also sitting at other people's tables, if that like makes sense. But you really like need to do both at the same time. And if you're, and the seat at the table, say, is what a full-time job in technology, would be, in certain ways. But then, say, you might join the board of a nonprofit organization, at the same time. And that gets you one step closer to then building your own table, extending your own company, and having your own board. Now, that it's important as an entrepreneur, and I saw this, with my with my father, he was there as the chairman and owner of his company. But, he was a 51% owner, obviously. There were 49% other stakeholders. So he had, he was doing things for them and they were doing things for him. He sat on other people's boards. He, of course, worked for 15 years as a lawyer. Before helping other people do deals before he started and did his own deal. So sitting at the table, entrepreneurship is, of course, hugely valued in this country, here in this community, and our students are so entrepreneurial. We have to kind of honor that. African Americans are twice as likely to go and start their own businesses. That in order to get there, it's important to have a seat at the table as well, and really do the two in concert. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, hopefully there are plenty of 21st century versions of Reginald Lewis out there.
Well, I really see that our students today, and when they come back and I just happen to ask them, okay, how's it going there? How many other people are in your classrooms? I mean, consistently, it's so few, like wherever they are, they're one of three, one of two, the only one, the lack of representation. But I know it reminds me of what I know my father was going through, which is that very early on in his career, he was a pioneer, as one of the only ones. And so I do see in him that I do see in them aspects of his life and what he's doing. I see it also here and in the really creative moves that the audience here and the funders are doing here in investing in different entrepreneurs. So I see shoots of hope, really shoots of hope here.
Yeah. 20 years from now, what do you hope to point to that will make you think, okay, I've made a difference? This was worthwhile?
Oh, well, I mean, one of our students like IPOs on the stock exchange, obviously. 10.
In a company that hopefully you've invested in.
Oh, yes. Oh man, no, that's getting ahead of myself. And obviously, with our students who are being so active, we just had another student on MSNBC actually with a fund that he's a straight up hedge fund that he started. It is something that I'm looking at. I mean, I am a private investor. I also chair the investment committee of our family foundation. So obviously, we are looking as well at like possible investments in this space when the time is right. The wonderful thing about also diversity happening in tech today is that there's even this conversation that people even know what I'm talking about. 6 years ago, in 2013, literally someone said to me, and it still happens, it never occurred to me that there were boys who were underrepresented. It never occurred to me that there were boys who were still facing any challenges whatsoever. And that's what really put me into this. That the problem was that people didn't even see that there was a problem, and I felt that, or I knew that I could just help take the conversation into different places, and different spaces to help raise awareness.
Yeah.
But yeah, in 20 years. Yeah, and maybe not just one. I'd like 10, but we need at least 3. We need at least 3. Can't just have one.
Yeah.
Can't just have one.
Well, let me ask you this last question. We have a lot of athletes in this room right now, lots of entrepreneurs, lots of investors. What is something that they can do to make a difference in their communities that you'd like to see? Maybe some homework for our audience today.
Well, I mean, the easy one is that also we've expanded from New York to Pittsburgh, and we're looking now at expanding over the course of time, across the country. So I'm looking for talking to people who are interested in getting involved and helping us do that, at the board level and at other levels. And obviously for the players here who display such a powerful role in the Black community in particular, that would be awesome to talk about that. But for them, I'd say that it's so, as investors, be conservative. And that your greatest asset is the hearts and minds of our youth. No. The greatest thing that you bring, find your edge. That's something that one of my father's business partners talked to me about. You find your edge, that thing that you have that other people don't have, and you go and you take advantage of it, and that's how you win. And I'd say that your edge is that you have the hearts and minds of our youth. They pay attention to you, and they pay attention to so few people. And right now in this country, there's such a disconnect between the older generations, even someone who's 40 and someone who's 15 right now. They aren't talking to each other. And so the fact that you are, every day, you're out there, even what you hear from the fans and what you see, that's data and information that's unique and an understanding about a certain market that you can bring. And you should bring that here into tech, and into others, and lean into it. Would be just sort of my kind of advice. And from a philanthropic standpoint, I'd love for you all to take just pictures of yourselves, listening to speakers, here in this sort of classroom setting, and learning, modeling the work that's involved to actually be a tech investor. I know that there's this great thing that LeBron and so many other players are practicing. That's amazing for growth mindset, showing that it involves the work, but then also showing the work of being here. I saw someone on his laptop taking notes. It's that's exactly what our youth need to see. That it's not just, and then there's the press release, and then there's, the money made, and that obviously really motivates them. But seeing modeling that there's work involved, in my Instagram story, sometimes I'm just showing my laptop screen, just I'm here, for 5 hours.
Those are some great action points.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
well, thank you for this today, Christina.
Thank you.